Get out now is the message going out in parts of California and coastal Louisiana. We are tracking mandatory evacuations, fast-moving wildfires, and a massive tropical storm churning up in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm Gadi Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. And we've got breaking news tonight. We're following two major weather stories that are developing right now here in California. More than 24 wildfires are burning in the middle of this intense heat wave we're experiencing. Firefighters in Orange County are now battling a new wildfire that has forced evacuations. Meanwhile, up north, the governor of California is sending in the National Guard to help with another ongoing wildfire emergency there. NBC's Dana Griffin is standing by in San Bernardino County, where thousands of buildings are at risk. But first, new storm surge and hurricane warnings as Tropical Storm Francine takes shape in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, the sandbags are out along parts of the Louisiana coast, preparing for what will likely be a hurricane later this week.
We're here in Terrebonne Parish as folks are getting ready for Tropical Storm Francine that is expected to make landfall this week.
Lower-lying areas have little to no levee protection down here. Sandbag locations, they are set up all throughout the parish. What's your best message to the public?
Be prepared. Don't say, oh, it's going to be nothing.
And for more on Francine's track in the next 24 to 48 hours, let's go to NBC's Al Roker.
We've got Tropical Storm Francine, 435 miles south-southwest of Cameron, Louisiana, 65-mile-per-hour winds, northwest at 7, going to be hanging out in the Gulf where we have record warm Gulf water temperatures. And as you can see, we've got hurricane warnings, hurricane watches for all of the Louisiana coastline, tropical storm watches for the Texas coast. This thing hasn't really gotten itself together yet, so we have to watch it very closely. The possible impacts, damaging winds, storm surge, heavy rain, and flash flooding makes landfall somewhere between Lake Charles and New Orleans sometime Wednesday afternoon with 100-mile-per-hour winds, and then continues all the way up into the Mississippi River Valley. We're talking 8 to 12 inches of rain, but of course, the big problem and the big killer, that's where we see most of our deaths, the storm surge. And that storm surge from Cameron, Morgan City, all the way to just about Grand Isle, 5 to 10 feet. So damaging winds, rain, and of course, we can't rule out tornadoes as well.
Al Roker, thank you. Meanwhile, new evacuations are happening right now in Southern California. This fire that you're looking at right now, it's exploded to more than 250 acres in just the last few hours. Some people in Orange County are being told to leave the area immediately. Others are under voluntary evacuation. Just another example of how dry it is out there. Meanwhile, the California National Guard is getting called up to help firefighters in San Bernardino County. That's where NBC's Dana Griffin joins us from the San Bernardino National Forest near the fire line out there. Dana, 16 wildfires burning right now. The one that you're at seems to be the most concerning, at least for now. Wildfires burning across California. What is the latest on the ground?
Yeah, and Gadi, it's so concerning because there are some 35,000 structures that are threatened right now. You've had thousands evacuate their homes, and even new evacuation orders went into effect today. I also want to show you just behind us. We've been monitoring this ridge for several hours, and we've noticed several flare-ups. There's actually one kind of peeking over out in the distance. This is the unpredictability part of this particular fire because they just don't know where new spots are going to pop up. And because we've had rain that's kind of dampened some of the flames, but then also it's reignited. And right now we've seen crews up and down this road kind of monitoring this area because you just don't know if it could possibly jump the highway here. So you mentioned this being one of the biggest fires. It's burned some 20,000 acres, and it's only 3% contained. It is burning in the San Bernardino National Forest. At this point, it's kind of in the wilderness, but that does not mean it cannot switch at any moment. That's why they have crews on all sides of this fire. And for people who are evacuating, it's really concerning. Listen to what one person experienced during this evacuation.
We hightailed it here as fast as we can, and now they've got the access point closed off. So we're really worried. We have to get our pets, we have to get medicines, family member.
Yeah, and just right now when we talk about conditions, we felt slight wind, nothing too robust like what we felt over the weekend, but we have this white charred ash that's also falling. So it's pretty gross, and people are reminded to wear a mask if possible, just so that you're not breathing in a lot of the particulate out here. Gadi?
Yeah, we've been getting some of that stuff way out here, and we're pretty far away from you in Los Angeles right now. How are firefighters attacking this fire? I mean, the images that we're seeing, you're seeing those red retardant lines there in the terrain, but that terrain, it looks extremely treacherous. I mean, that is some steep stuff.
It is very steep, and that's the issue. It's not like most fires where, say, it's burning along the roadside, you'll see crews kind of attacking it on the ground. They are really attacking this from up above. We've seen several water drops, including behind us earlier today. So that is the focus. You've got the California National Guard coming in. They are deploying resources to help not only fight the fire, but also deploying helicopters so that these firefighters can get a handle. Also, there's been 1,800 firefighters added to this, or 1,800 total added to this fire. That has tripled since the weekend, where they had just some 600 firefighters out here. So they are dedicating as many resources as possible, because they realize that this is a very tough situation, and because it can switch at any moment, that's the concern. Usually they know where the head of the fire is going, and they have a pretty good idea, so they'll focus all the resources in one area, but they literally have firefighters on all sides because it is so steep, so rugged, and it could go anywhere. Gadi?
And Dana, some of the video that we were just watching, that's the fire that's burning in Orange County. If we can pull that back up, because, you know, we're talking about this extreme heat, this heat wave that we've seen. You know, we had a lot of moisture earlier in the year, but after a few days of the heat that we've had, what's the condition like there on the ground when it comes to all the dry brush behind you? I mean, does it seem like that's ready to ignite at any moment?
Potentially. And you bring up such a great point, because when we talk about just changing climate and hotter temperatures, which are creating drier conditions out here as well. And we had those, you know, wet, rainy seasons earlier in the year, and that is what has fueled a lot of the vegetation that you can see out here. It has overgrown in some areas, but when the summer months come, a lot of that gets so dry and it becomes tender. And I know you've covered wildfires here throughout your vast career, so you know what it is like. You can, just walking on the ground, you can hear the crunch. That is the thing that makes these sort of fires go up. And as you can see, this hillside is pretty green. So that is the type of things, these are the type of things that can also catch fire. And if this comes over the ridge, like we assume it will, just because we've seen it flare up so much, it could easily come down this gully and take off. And so the temperatures and the weather patterns here play a major role in the fire activity that we've seen, not only here in San Bernardino County, but also across California and Nevada and other parts of the West. Gadi?
Dana Griffin out on the fire lines. Dana, thank you. And a major development in the trial of Bryan Kohberger, who stands accused of murdering 4 students at the University of Idaho. It looks like that trial will be moving to a different city, according to a judge's decision that just came down in that case. But which city? Well, that has not been decided yet. We do know it won't be in Latah County, Idaho, where the killings of these 4 college students took place. The judge says it would be impossible to find a pool of impartial jurors there because of the trial's extensive media coverage. The judge also said it was the most difficult decision of his career. Let's bring in NBC's Morgan Chesky, who's been following this for us all day. Morgan, isn't the media coverage for this trial going to be like absolutely bananas no matter where it is? This case is horrific, right?
No doubt.
Everybody knows about it. So where are they going next?
Yeah, Gadi, the judge pointed out to a couple of specific factors when he released this decision earlier today. Of course, he acknowledged the fact that there has been widespread coverage of this. I think they called forth like 1,000 articles that have come out since this tragedy took place. I think that, coupled with the fact that Moscow is such a tight-knit town, contributed to the judge's decision. Also, a key factor here, Gadi, is the fact the judge himself acknowledged that the courthouse, the staff, is not able, at least in his estimation, to handle a trial of this magnitude, saying that they would need to have more court clerks, more security. He said that there would be a concern if there was a true emergency, that staff needing to protect the courthouse during this trial would have to be diverted to protect its nearby community. And that is why he came to the decision that he did earlier today.
It seems like so much frustration for a community that's already gone through so much. and now they have to wait to see where this will be held. So do we know when that decision will come down?
No firm timeline set as of now, and we don't know exactly where it will be. The defense has repeatedly mentioned Boise, Idaho, the capital there, obviously much bigger city with more resources. But here's an interesting point here. Take a look at these counties surveyed by the defense. Now, the survey was, do you think Bryan Kohberger, the accused, is innocent or guilty? In Latah County, where the crime occurred, 67% of respondents said guilty, 24% definitely guilty. In Ada County, where Boise's located, Gadi, 68% believe guilty, 22% said definitely guilty. So the defense calling this a win on its face, but according to the results of this survey, you're not really getting significantly different results. It will be interesting to see how this plays out. The decision on where this trial now goes to an administrative director to decide its new venue.
And what is it, the victims' families? I mean, they have been adamant that they can see this and have a fair trial in Latah County. What are they saying after this decision?
Well, we've only had a chance to hear from one of them, but the family of Kaylee Gonzalez is absolutely incensed, and we've heard from multiple families throughout this process that have really pointed to the fact that the defense has taken everything upon themselves to delay this as much as possible. We have a quote from the Gonzalez family I want to share with you tonight, really calling this judge out directly, saying the only good thing about this decision is it will be Judge John Judge's last decision in this case. If the judge knew Latah County could not handle this trial for safety reasons, not enough court clerks, logistics, and lacking space, why did we waste over a year in a county he knew was not going to handle this trial? The trial date, June 2nd, 2025. As for where? TBD.
Yeah, a powerful question from the Gonzalez family. Morgan, thank you. Tonight, a gunman who opened fire on a major highway and shot at least 12 cars is still on the run. Here is the chaos that one witness saw while driving down a Kentucky highway when those shots rang out.
But we were just driving along. I was in the middle lane, and all of a sudden we heard like a very loud noise. It sounded almost like an explosion when we both jumped up in our seats. And at first I thought maybe like a rock had flown through my window or something. We were both in shock about it, because it seemed like we literally dodged a bullet,
Well, they dodged a bullet, but 5 people were hurt in that rampage, and police named 32-year-old Joseph Couch as the prime suspect. That's him right there after finding his SUV on a service road near the shooting scene. Joining us now from Kentucky is NBC's Adrian Broadus. Adrian, it has been 3 days of searching for him, with more than a dozen school districts having to close down today because of that manhunt. Does it seem like police are finding him, or getting close to finding him at least?
Gadi, that is the big question. The sheriff here in Laurel County says they are going to exhaust all resources and search until they find him. Now, the search on foot, that is, will come to an end. They will have to suspend it at nightfall because it is too dangerous for these groups of 25 to 50 special response teams to be searching on ground. Here's more of what investigators told us today about their search.
Our goal is to apply steady pressure and wearing Mr. Couch down. The longer he is in the woods, last night it got pretty chilly, and today it's got kind of humid and hot. Hopefully he has no water and nothing to eat, and just time that we will wear him down.
And Gadi, special response teams are using drones, helicopters, and dogs to search for this 32-year-old in a wooded area about 8 miles or so from where we are right now. And that area is along Interstate 75 where that shooting happened on Saturday evening, Gadi.
Adrian, so it sounds like they know a lot about the area he might be in, but what do we know about the suspect? I mean, what kind of gun was he using in those shootings, and did those shootings appear to be random?
So I'll start with your last question. Investigators say they believe this shooting was planned, but the people who were injured, the 5 that were seriously injured, and the other vehicles that were shot at were not targeted. Here's what we have learned from court documents. We know about 30 minutes before that initial 911 call came in, the
alleged shooter, Joseph Couch, sent a text message to a woman saying in part that I'll kill myself afterwards. Before that, he sent a message saying, I'm going to kill a lot of people. Well, try at least. Now, when that woman received that text message from that 32-year-old, she told authorities she tried to warn 911 dispatch calling to let them know what he had shared with her. We know he has a military background. He served about 4 years, according to investigators, with the U.S. Army Reserve, and his family told investigators he struggled with PTSD, Gadi.
Yeah, some chilling details there. Hopefully they catch him soon. Adrian Broadus, thank you. And now to a bombshell revelation about the deadly school shooting in Georgia, where we now have learned that the suspect's mom actually warned the school about her son the day of that shooting. The Washington Post first reporting about that critical call to Appalachia High School, where she apparently warned a counselor of an extreme emergency. This comes as we are getting a look at newly released body cam video from last year when officials interviewed the suspect and his dad over concerning threats the suspect posted online. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson has more.
This is some serious stuff.
Newly released body cam footage from the Jackson County Sheriff's Department shows the moment law enforcement questioned Colt Gray last year about threats made online to, quote, shoot up an elementary school.
I promise I would never say something. So you haven't used Discord in a few months, and you're saying you didn't say anything like that? No, the only thing I have is TikTok, but I just go around there and watch videos.
The now 14-year-old is charged with 4 counts of felony murder after allegedly killing students and teachers at his high school last week. Little over a year after officers left his doorstep deeming the threat unsubstantiated.
I got no choice but to take it to work right now, but like I was telling your dad, if we find out otherwise, then it's a different story, okay? It's a really different story.
The video release comes as we're learning that the shooter's mother made an urgent call warning school officials a half hour before shots rang out. The school district declined to comment on specific details of an active investigation. Schools here are set to reopen tomorrow, except for the high school, which will remain closed. Meanwhile, investigators are still searching for a motive.
Thompson, thank you. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Up next, we are about 24 hours away from the first time Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will face each other in a presidential debate, and the stakes could not be higher. Our NBC political team has the latest on how both sides are preparing right now. Plus, last week we told you about the possible return of the Fyre Festival. Well, tonight, NBC's Savannah Sellers sits down with the festival's founder in an exclusive interview. Could that event really happen? We're going to tell you about that in just a bit. And Apple is calling today's event its biggest of the year. So what's all the hype about? Well, we're going to have the specs behind the new iPhone 16, the watch, the AirPods. We're going to let you decide, too. That's in tonight's Future of Everything. So stay tuned. Hey, welcome back, and here are some of the headlines we're watching tonight. Jury selection is underway in the federal trial of 3 former Memphis police officers charged in the death of Tyree Nichols. Now, all 3 have pleaded not guilty to charges of violating Nichols' civil rights and obstructing justice. Body cam video of a traffic stop last year showed Nichols running from the officers before he was kicked and punched. Nichols died days later, and the trial is expected to last 3 to 4 weeks. And NHL player Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew were laid to rest today. Hundreds attended the church service outside Philadelphia. The brothers were riding bikes late last month in New Jersey when they were hit and killed by a suspected drunk driver. During her eulogy, Johnny's wife announced she is pregnant with the couple's 3rd child and that she was able to tell Johnny before his death. And several New Jersey schools were closed today after shooting threats were posted online. A TikTok post mentioned 5 schools, and police have charged 3 juveniles who live in 3 different towns. The closures were done as a precaution, and there are no active threats, according to authorities. And starting tomorrow, mammogram reports are required by the FDA to include a patient's breast density. The dense breasts can make it harder to spot cancer on a mammogram, which can mean a high risk for breast cancer. This new standard was approved in March 2023, and providers had until now to make that change. And New Hampshire's governor rescued someone choking on a lobster roll. He did the Heimlich on a competitor in a lobster roll eating contest yesterday, and the man apparently jumped right back in after choking, eating 7 more lobster rolls after that. What a wild competition. And we are 24 hours away from the second presidential debate, but the first between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. The face-off coming less than 2 months away from Election Day and nearly 3 months after the unfortunate debate, which led to President Biden leaving the race, pushing Vice President Harris into the spotlight. Our team is covering it from all angles. First, let's go to NBC's Mike Mimley, who has the latest on Harris's prep. Mike, what do we know about how the vice president is planning to approach the debate here?
Well, this is such a huge moment for her, Gadi. Remember, it's been just barely a month since she officially became the Democratic nominee. She had to get ready for a convention, a big debut on the national stage with her acceptance speech. And then her team really went hard to debate prep full time. She's been in Pittsburgh for the last 5 days doing mock debates, reviewing all these policy proposals, but also really planning for what is unique to debating Donald Trump, preparing for some potential personal attacks. She talked about this in a radio interview. Let's listen to that.
He plays from this really old and tired playbook, right? Where there's no floor for him in terms of how low he will go. And we should be prepared for that. We should be prepared for the fact that he is not burdened by telling the truth. And we should be prepared for the fact that he is probably going to speak a lot of untruths.
So the Harris team preparing for personal attacks, but they're also trying to do what they can to needle, as they're putting it, Donald Trump. They're planning for this as part of the debate prep, but they also put a new ad on the air today, which features a number of former Trump administration officials all warning about why he can't return to the Oval Office.
Meanwhile, Mike, what do we know about how Trump is prepping? Because from what I'm reading, his coaches include Mike Pompeo, Tulsi Gabbard. What do we know about that?
Well, those are two interesting people to be at the table with him, because you look at one of the potential attacks that the former president could make. Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, former CIA director in the Trump administration. They really want to link Kamala Harris to the Biden administration's hand of the Afghanistan withdrawal. We know they've been drawing a lot of attention to that in recent weeks. But Tulsi Gabbard is the most interesting one here, because Trump and Harris have never even met each other. But Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democrat, remember, she ran in the 2020 primaries against Kamala Harris. They actually debated one another, and Tulsi Gabbard had a moment in a debate against Kamala Harris that really rattled Kamala Harris. And so that's something that I think speaks to the strategy here for Donald Trump. They want to use that moment where she went after him on her policing record to try to speak to some of the challenges of her introducing herself to voters on her own terms in ways that might also hurt her with Democratic base voters.
And Mike, there's been a lot of back and forth about the rules here. So what's the final ruling? What's the rule book look like for this debate?
You know, Gadi, there used to be a debate commission so that there wouldn't be these kinds of fights over the rules, but they threw that out the window. The Harris team really did have to make a big concession here, because they wanted to have both candidates really able to speak over one another. Instead, we're going to have this mute button. When one candidate is talking, the other one will have their microphone muted. Think about what was one of the most memorable moments from Kamala Harris's vice presidential debate in 2020, when Mike Pence, the vice president at the time, was trying to interrupt her as she was speaking. She turned to him and said, "Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking, I'm speaking." Well, if these microphones are muted, we're not going to have a moment like that. And I think that really speaks to a win for the Trump side, even before they show up on stage in Philadelphia tomorrow.
A lot to watch for tomorrow. Mike Mimley, thank you so much for joining us. And as former President Trump is preparing for tomorrow's big night, looming over it are his legal troubles and his attacks on the Justice Department. NBC's Von Hilliard has more on that.
Tonight, as he prepares for his critical debate showdown, former President Trump vowing to totally reshape the Justice Department and target political opponents.
We will completely overhaul Kamala's corrupt Department of Injustice.
He recently reposted doctored images of top Democrats, along with Anthony Fauci and Bill Gates in orange jumpsuits with the caption, "How to Actually Fix the System." And in Trump's new book, alleging Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg will try to unlawfully influence the 2024 election, writing, if he does anything illegal, this time he will spend the rest of his life in prison. Just this weekend, Trump promising possible retribution against 2024 election administrators, writing, lawyers, political operatives, donors, illegal voters, and corrupt election officials, those involved in unscrupulous behavior, will be sought out, caught, and prosecuted at levels unfortunately never seen before in our country. but illegal voting is rare. And tonight, a Republican election official in Arizona told us he's worried.
I'm concerned. We will see potentially professionals who are more willing to bend general rules of prosecutorial ethics or legal standards, who will occupy these positions.
This summer's consequential Supreme Court ruling also gave a president absolute immunity over anything he orders or says to his attorney general. Though Trump's GOP supporters argue that DOJ and Democratic prosecutors are going after him to hurt his campaign.
My poll numbers, I believe, are higher now because the public understands it's a hoax.
The Harris campaign responded to Trump's recent statements by saying he wants to, quote, use his unchecked power to prosecute his enemies.
Ron Hilliard, thank you. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump squaring off tomorrow for the first time in the presidential debate hosted by ABC News, and you can watch it on NBC and NBC News Now with full coverage starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. And coming up, Kate's comeback. The Princess of Wales has an update after her cancer diagnosis, how soon she could return to the public eye. But first, you gotta see this. Big bears and big vegetables. Yeah, those massive pumpkins right in that trough there, cabbages, you know, the ones you see at the state fairs that are being put to good use, are getting put to good use in Alaska. Their annual event, they just wrapped up. So all those mega veggies turned into a huge feast for bears at the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center. They chowed down as visitors looked on behind them there. I don't think any of those bears' tummies were growling after that feast. We'll be right back. Back, and here are some of the stories happening out west that we're following right now. A pretty dramatic drunk driving crash hurt 30 people in Arizona. That's when a man drove right into a building in Apache Junction. The 73-year-old was arrested. Police say alcohol was involved. No one was killed, but at least 10 people had to be taken to nearby hospitals. In a Boulder, Colorado, councilwoman was attacked at the opening of a local dim sum restaurant. Police say a man shouted racial slurs during a cultural dance at the event. The councilwoman apparently yelled at the man, and he then violently attacked her. The suspect was arrested and charged with assault. And it's the new Starbucks CEO's first day. Brian Nichols jumped over from Chipotle after helping it through the pandemic and food safety problems. It's a pretty turbulent time at Starbucks with struggling sales, a slumping stock price, and he's expected to try to turn things around there. And have you ever Googled antitrust? Well, the tech giant is in hot water as a new antitrust trial began today, just a month after a judge declared it an illegal monopoly. The Justice Department is targeting Google's advertising technology. Google's ad tech tools accounted for $20 billion in revenue, or about 11% of the company's gross revenue in 2020. Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Angela Sinandela to talk a little bit more about this trial. So, Angela, if the Department of Justice finds that Google did violate the law in this circumstance, what could happen?
Hey, Gadi. So, yeah, if at the end of all the appeals it turns out that Google really lost, then it is possible they'd be forced to sell off parts of their business, or at the very least have heavy restrictions on their ability to do deals in this space. And it's the ad tech space. It has to do with those annoying banners that you see on publishers' websites, almost 90% of them, according to this lawsuit. So what the DOJ is alleging is that Google at this point controls every link in the process of this auction from the beginning to the end, also repping both the buyer and the seller, and even then running the auction itself. So the DOJ is claiming that if we then allow for fair competition in this marketplace, then publishers, all sorts of journalist websites would be able to recover a lot of money, be able to hold on more of it that Google is currently taking. And also, as a result of that, we as users wouldn't see so many annoying ads on our pages because publishers would have other ways of making money, Gadi.
And what is Google saying about all this?
So Google's saying quite a bit. First of all, they're saying that this acquisition, which is at the center of this investigation, the fact that they acquired DoubleClick in 2008 and then thus catapulted their revenue and their market share, which now the government is saying is a violation of antitrust law. First of all, federal antitrust regulators approved that deal to begin with. They are also saying that they do face stiff competition from Amazon, from Meta, and also from social media. A lot of their arguments are that the government doesn't really understand technology today, and that in the past, maybe some of these things could have been more relevant, but today in this marketplace, Google, they claim, no longer has this sort of monopoly.
Government doesn't understand? That's a pretty interesting argument there. Last month, we saw Google lose a landmark case. It determined that the company illegally monopolized the online search industry. If Google is found guilty in this case, what impact could that have?
So there's two possible sides of this. First of all, there could be huge impacts affecting large chunks of their revenue and possibly being forced to sell off parts of their business. But what I just said earlier about maybe the government not fully understanding, this is a thread that goes across all of these different trials. So even with this last antitrust trial, what happened is this monopoly of search. Well, now there's OpenAI, there's ChatGPT, there's all sorts of competitors. So the judge there, even though they declared Google monopolist in that trial, said, oh, wow, even now trying to do sentencing or, some sort of judgment here, we realize that technology has changed. So in the same way, perhaps by the time there is any sort of judgment given on this lawsuit, it's possible Google has already then just moved so far forward that this might not even be relevant, Gadi.
An important thread to pull on, and I love that you're doing that. Angela Sinadella, thank you so much. We're following some developing news right now. Harvey Weinstein was rushed from prison to an emergency operating room for a heart surgery. Now, a rep for the 72-year-old former movie mogul says he was taken from New York City's Riker Island to a hospital to remove fluid from his lungs and his heart. He was also hospitalized back in July, where he tested positive for COVID and double pneumonia. This all comes after Weinstein's conviction in New York on rape and sexual assault charges was overturned earlier this year due to unfair testimony in the original trial. He remains in custody while waiting for a new trial. And remember the infamous Fyre Music Festival? Well, it's coming back. It was the promise of a luxurious private island entertainment retreat. It turned into a social media disaster. The fallout even landing the founder in prison, but he is out. And NBC News Now anchor Savannah Sellers sat down with him in an exclusive interview to discuss a new plan.
Turn around. Turn this bus right around.
It's been 7 years since Fyre Festival sent the internet ablaze and made headlines worldwide.
No one can get in the rooms. No one can get their bags. We've been here for hours.
The 2017 event was billed as an ultra-glamorous music festival getaway with a marketing campaign featuring supermodels and stars like Bella Hadid and Kendall Jenner and artists like Blink-182. But in reality,
an absolute disaster.
No fancy lodging or five-star catering. Instead, emergency relief tents and a viral cheese sandwich. And the mayhem became a streaming sensation during the pandemic, with Netflix and Hulu documenting the disaster.
These are the lockers that are just being set up. We are taking off the plastic that are supposed to hold our valuables.
Billy McFarland was behind it all, and it landed him behind bars for 4 years for wire fraud and ultimately owing $26 million to investors.
Fyre Festival 2 tickets.
Released from prison in 2022, McFarland is back with promises of a legitimate festival, revealing his plans exclusively to NBC News.
Fyre Festival 2 is happening April 25th. Of 2025, so we're 7.5 months away. We have a private island off the coast of Mexico in the Caribbean.
McFarland says the difference this time around will be using existing infrastructure, including hotels and restaurants, and a production company to handle all the logistics.
Have the conversations at least begun with any musical acts?
We haven't booked any talent for Fyre 2. It's not going to be just music. For example, Karate Combat, we're in talks with them to set up a pit to have live fights at Fyre Festival 2.
McFarland says he's already sold 100 tickets at $500 a piece, and packages will go on sale ranging from $1,400 to $1.1 million.
What do you get for $1.1 million?
Yeah, so you will be on a boat. You'll be scuba diving with me. You'll be bouncing around to other islands and other countries on small planes.
You believe someone will pay $1.1 million for a Fyre Festival 2 experience?
So we put applications for the $1 million ticket up a few months ago. We had over 100 people apply.
For someone who made it to the Bahamas for Fyre Festival 1, they were sleeping on a wet mattress, in a tent, little food, little water. How would you convince them to buy a ticket to Fyre Festival 2?
I think it's hard because this is the deeper issue where there are people who were legitimately hurt and let down from Fyre 1. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to repay those people.
As for the infamous Fyre food,
we will have cheese sandwiches. They're going to be super expensive too. We're going to make them really good. That'll be the highest priced food item, I think.
Only one way to find out. We send Savannah Sellers. Savannah, thank you. Coming up, a powerful typhoon causing devastation and dozens of deaths in Southeast Asia, the extent of the damage, and more headlines from around the world, all coming up after the break, so stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. Airstrikes by Israel on military sites in Syria killed at least 18 people and hurt dozens more. They reportedly targeted a missile development facility. Israel has not commented on those strikes. And Ukraine's Air Force shot down 6 Russian drones and 2 missiles overnight near Kyiv. No injuries or damage were reported in the capital city, and this comes 2 days after Ukrainian forces say they took nearly 60 Russian drones out of the sky. And Typhoon Yagi slamming northern Vietnam, leaving behind a deadly trail of destruction. At least 59 people have been killed in the country, with more people considered missing right now. The strongest storm to hit Asia this year wiped out a bridge and has knocked out power to millions. Yagi has weakened, but more rain and floods are expected. And an international manhunt is underway for a suspect accused of pouring hot coffee onto a 9-month-old baby in Australia. Security footage shows a man, but no name has been released. Police say he fled the country just hours before police identified him. The infant suffered serious burns and has undergone multiple surgeries. His parents tell Sky News he has a long road to recovery. And a big update from the royal family in England tonight. Kate Middleton has now completed her chemotherapy for cancer and will be attending a few events throughout the end of this year. The news was revealed in a video earlier today where you can see the Duchess along with her kids and her husband, Prince William. And this update comes some 6 months after the princess confirmed that she was undergoing treatment for an unspecified form of cancer. NBC's Danielle Hamanjan has more from Buckingham Palace.
Well, in the words of Princess Kate, it's been an incredibly rough 9 months, and she said that life can change in just an instant. As anybody who has been through this will tell you, that it's not just the chemotherapy, it is the recovery period after the treatment, and that's where she finds herself now. And so it's going to be a gradual return to work for Kate. And in this video, we hear her say that that the journey for her has been, quote, complex, scary, and unpredictable. She said that she had to face her own vulnerabilities, and that has given her a new perspective. The video is quite an intimate portrayal of this family. It is a glimpse into the lives of the future queen, the future king, and their 3 children. And it shows them in a way we've never seen them before, really. Running around on the beach, having a picnic, playing cards. We see Kate's head resting on the shoulder of Prince William, and a level of affection that we're not used to seeing between the two. But this, as Princess Kate talks about the future now, and what will that look like? Well, in the next few months, she hopes to attend a handful of events. There are some big dates on the royal calendar, the next one being Remembrance Sunday. That is in November. The entire royal family will be attending. Will she attend? We will find out closer to the date.
It was only a matter of time, and now it's official. AI comes to the iPhone. Apple unveiling its latest offerings today, including 4 versions of the iPhone 16, plus updated AirPods and watches. But it's the AI that Apple is hyping the most. And here to break it all down is NBC business and data correspondent Brian Chung. Brian, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Let's start with the AI, the name. Wow, so creative. Apple Intelligence. Like, what can it do? What can't it do? And when are we going to be able to get our hands on it?
Yeah, Apple Intelligence for AI, right? But look, this is a really big deal for Apple, which saw iPhone sales decline by something like 10% as according to their last earnings. So they need a big boost here, and they're betting on the software because, let's face it, the phones themselves, the iPhone 16, it looks basically the same as the iPhone 15. So what is an Apple Intelligence? Well, it's supposed to make your phone a little bit smarter, a smarter Siri. So things like allowing your users to rewrite, proofread, and summarize your text more efficiently. Also, it's supposed to assist with searching photos and removing distracting objects from backgrounds, a lot easier photo editing through these things. And then also allowing users to create images from context, things like Genmojis. So if I wanted to text you, Gadi, and I wanted to send you a frog with a cowboy hat, I could say, make a frog with a cowboy hat, and it would send that specialized Genmoji straight to you. So these are part silly, part work related. But again, it's the smarter Siri where you'll be able to ask things like, hey, find that recipe that person sent me, and it'll scan through all your messages and emails to pull that up for you. Again, these features won't come out necessarily right away. It might be a few months even after the iPhone 16 hits the store shelves that you'll get some of these features. Worth noting.
Not even right away. I mean, it's been no secret that, like, some people would say Apple's lagging behind when it comes to AI. You see people with Androids, like, pulling out their phones, using the image search thing. Gemini, Google, they've been out in front. I mean, is this too little too late? How much ground does Apple need to make up here to grab some of that market back?
Yeah, and even that last bit that I explained where, Apple, which usually likes to release the software alongside its hardware, is saying actually even after the iPhone 16 comes out, users are going to have to update their phones to get some of these features like just proofreading through your emails. This is during a time where you're seeing some of these crazy use cases from the likes of Google, from OpenAI, from Samsung that are really boasting even next-gen type things. I mean, Google was piloting something not long ago where you take your phone camera and you kind of scan across your desk, and if you forgot your eyeglasses somewhere, your phone would say, oh, by the way, we saw from the video earlier that you left it right by your coffee mug. That is way different in advance than, say, just proofreading your email. So, yes, there is that argument, but Apple is saying that they want to be really conservative on the privacy bit of things. Again, because this uses so much of your data in your phone, that they're saying that they want to get this right, as they outlined when they unveiled this AI earlier in the summer.
I feel like such a dummy consumer because Google had me at that. Wait, they can help me find my glasses, and then with this Apple stuff, the only thing that really caught my attention is like, wait, somebody's calling me and I've got my AirPods in and I shake my head no if I don't want to talk to them, and I nod for yes. That seemed okay. You kind of, maybe I'll try that out. But was there anything else that you saw that Apple unveiled today that stuck out?
I mean, Gadi, what you're speaking to is that Apple wants to go with more practical applications, whereas Google and OpenAI, they're trying to make the big bets on kind of secondary, tertiary uses of this AI. But yeah, I mean, Apple, they're focusing on things that you can do here and now, and look no further than the other products that they unveiled, like the AirPods and also with the Apple Watch. And the AirPods side of things, very interesting to see that they added the capability to essentially use your AirPods as listening aids if you do have some sort of hearing disability. That's a huge deal for a lot of people that rely on hearing aids on a daily basis. And then on the other side of things, with the watch, they're saying, all right, what are ways that we could practically make this more usable? Well, first off, make it slimmer, make the materials for this Ultra watch, which is supposed to be for athletes, a little bit more durable. Those are the things that they're focusing on, and it comes with a pretty penny, right? These AirPods, the new AirPods 4, it's going to be $179 if you want the noise-canceling function. That's a lot more expensive than just getting the thing you can plug in. So again, they're hoping that people pay that premium. These are for very practical applications, Gadi.
And we are hoping for some backward compatibility with some of the stuff we already have. So fingers crossed. Bryan Chung, thanks so much, brother. And that does it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. Tomorrow night, join us for the presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, hosted by ABC News. Full coverage starts at 8 p.m. Eastern on NBC and NBC News Now. I'll be back on Wednesday. Until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.